All right, let's jump right in. Imagine a world where every new government app, every digital ID system had to be used first by the politicians and officials who signed off on it. Not by you, but by them. That's the powerful idea we're digging into today. A whole new framework for government tech that stops using its own citizens as test subjects. So this phrase right here is really the heart of the whole idea. Politics that doesn't use citizens as guinea pigs. And look, it's way more than just a catchy slogan. It's a shot across the bow at a huge, common problem. And it's also a blueprint for a totally different way of doing things, one that's built from the ground up on accountability. So what does this actually look like in the real world? I mean, have you ever tried to use a new government website or app and it was just buggy or confusing or it flat out didn't work? Well, if you have, then congratulations, you were basically an unwilling beta tester. And that's the exact problem we're talking about. You know, in a perfect world, any news system would go through all this intense testing to work out the kinks before we ever see it. But the reality? That whole critical testing phase often gets squeezed or even skipped entirely. And that turns the public, yep, you and me, into the first line of defense for finding all the bugs. Just look at the difference here. It's night and day. On the left, you've got the ideal way to do things, a careful, step-by-step rollout. You start small, get feedback, make it better, and then you slowly expand. But on the right, well, that's the political reality. It's often just this mad dash to launch, skipping all those crucial steps just to hit some date that was promised in a speech. So the big question is, why? Why does this happen? It's not always just bad planning. The source material argues there are some very real pressures baked right into the system, pressures that push governments toward this messy, rushed approach. And they tell you a lot about how these big decisions get made behind the scenes. Okay, so let's break this down. First up, you have these top-down schedules. Some leader makes a big promise. We're going to have this nationwide by next year. And suddenly, that political deadline becomes more important than any technical warnings. And then, you've got this fear of political damage. Think about it. If the politicians themselves test a buggy system, that failure is an instant news headline. It's much, much safer for them to let the public find the bugs quietly. All of this creates a we'll just fix it later culture and this deep-seated aversion to risk, where the people in charge want to be as far away as possible when things inevitably go wrong at the start. But what if you could flip that whole dynamic on its head? This is where things get really interesting. Instead of just accepting this broken process, the source proposes a pretty radical shift in thinking that completely changes who is incentivized to get it right. And here it is. It's called the politician first model. And the rule is actually super simple. Before any new digital service gets rolled out to the public, it has to be used exclusively by the politicians, the top bureaucrats, and the agency heads who approved it in the first place. They become the mandatory first users, period. Okay, so you're probably thinking, how would this actually work? Is this just a cool idea, or is there a real plan? Well, it's not just a vague concept. The source material lays out a really clear 4-step blueprint for how to make this happen. Let's walk through this, because it's super logical. Step 1, the politician first trial. For a few months, only they can use it for their official business. Maybe their own paychecks and expenses have to run through it. Step 2, if it survives that, it moves to a limited pilot in a controlled group, like a single government department. And only if it passes both of those high-stakes tests does it move to Step 3, a slow, gradual public rollout that gets shut down the second a major problem pops up. And finally, Step 4 makes it real. A legal framework where, if bugs do slip through and affect the public, the ministry or the developer in charge faces actual penalties. And this, right here, is where the true genius of the model kicks in. It's not just about catching bugs a little earlier. It's about fundamentally rewiring the incentives for every single person involved. It just completely flips the script on who is responsible for what. You know, the logic is so simple, it's brilliant. If you know that you and all your colleagues are going to be the very first people forced to use a new system for your own day-to-day work, you suddenly have a very, very strong motivation to make sure it's secure, easy to use, and actually works from day one. Your own personal headache is now directly tied to the quality of the thing you're building. And this slide just lays it all out perfectly, right? In the system we have now, a bug that affects a regular citizen is, it's a statistic on a report. In this new model, it actually triggers a penalty for the people in charge. And when politicians are the first users, the standards for safety and usability just have to go up. It's not some abstract problem anymore. It's a personal annoyance they're going to want to avoid at all costs. So let's just end with this thought. This whole model is being proposed for technology, but just think about the bigger picture for a second. What if the people making the big decisions were always the first ones to feel the effects of those decisions, whether it's in tech or healthcare or education? Just imagine how that might transform the quality and the care put into our public services. It's a pretty powerful idea to chew on.